before we start, this series, the topic is one which some of you will just be, oh, well, Kabbalah's back, we're going to go to that topic, we're going to go, it's Monday night. And some of you may be because of the title, which is what we're talking about over the next few weeks, which is respond to crisis and whatever. It's that sort of vibe. And with that, there may be the coming to tonight's shiur, subconsciously, without any genuine intent, to get some sort of answer to why you might be going through, or why you know someone who's going through, or why you have gone through, why someone you know has gone through. What I'd like you to do is just literally take a moment to collect whatever thoughts you have, whatever questions you have, and just remove them. They might come up next week or the week after, but let's just remove any expectations that there's going to be some clear-cut answers to crisis, pain, suffering. That's not what we're doing. Or we might, but I don't want you to come like waiting. When's he going to say it? When's he going to say it? Because I'm not saying it. I might accidentally, but I'm not coming. At least if we were, we would have advertised this as a half-hour session. Like, here's the answer to your crisis. Goodbye, Charlie. So I'm not doing that. But I want to address where that sort of thinking comes from. So everyone's ready to start? We've put the expectations out of our head for the moment? Good. So in most things in life, we tend to look for patterns or meaning. That's what we do. The human mind is designed to see patterns. If we didn't see patterns, we probably wouldn't see much at all in our life. It's the fact that we recognize people, the fact that we can identify people as humans and animals as animals and trees as trees, is because our brain is constantly looking at the patterns that are presenting and saying, right, that pattern means this, that pattern means that, etc., etc. So we're designed to see patterns, and there's a lot of interesting research into that. But then we go a step further. We're also designed, quite naturally, to look for meaning. In fact, one of the biggest studies, not biggest, a very common study that has taken place over the better part of the last few hundred years is, why is it that people are always looking for meaning? Why do we look for meaning? Why must there be meaning? The cynics will say that's the basis of religion. It's just a bunch of confused people who are trying to attribute meaning to meaningless things. Whatever. I'm not going to go into the research because I'm not in that field, but I can explain to you the fundamental concept that every single person has a soul. Every single person has this internal energy. This internal energy is not just what keeps us alive. It's what makes us function. It's what makes the brain function. It's what makes the brain function in the complex way that it does. It's what makes our proverbial heart have emotion. It's what allows our very real fingers and toes move the way it does. It's what allows the body, which is just a machine. The brain is a part of the machine. The heart is a part of the machine. The muscles, blood vessels, it's all a part of the machine. The soul is what makes the machine come to life and operate in a way of consciousness. So you can't say, there's the soul. The soul is there. When a person is alive, it is evident that they've got a soul. Likewise, an animal. When an animal is alive, it is evident that that animal has a soul. When a tree is alive, it is evident that the tree has a soul. Now, when any of those things die, as long as they have not decomposed completely, it is evident that there is still a nitzutz, there is still a spark of energy, there is still something that is allowing it to be maintained in the realm of physicality. The same thing that allows rocks to exist allows a corpse, a dead tree to exist. And over the course of decomposition, the soul, or the energy that allows it to exist, begins to leave. Eventually, at some point when the soul is left, the body has decomposed, or when the decomposition is completed, the soul is left. The two are happening at the same time. One is a result of the other. So as long as something exists, there is an energy that allows it to be there. As long as something is alive, there is a soul. It's not the same as an energy. There is a soul in there. Everyone's soul is linked to everyone else's soul. Everyone's nitzutz, everyone's soul has a relationship with every other nitzutz, every other spark of energy, because all energy comes from the same thing and all energy is the same thing. It would be a bit like if I could, you know those art pieces that they're drawings but made from one line? Starbucks in America just designed their season, their Kratzmach season cup. It's a cup with a whole lot of faces. It's 1,000 people or something, and it's one line, and it's drawn all the people. Do you know what I'm talking about, this sort of art? So basically, the artist draws one line and just squiggles it in a way that a whole lot of images are drawn, but that pen or pencil never left the paper, nor was there ever any shading. It's one line that goes around and it makes eyes and nose and faces and bodies of multiple people. It's an incredible piece of art. So imagine you've got a blank piece of paper over here, and you just start. And when you finish, what have you got? You've got paper, you've got a line on it. The paper is still there. Much of the image is still there. Much of the whiteness is still there. All you've done is drawn a line, rub it out, and the paper's there. What we are just lines on a paper. The paper was always there. The soul and the energy field is always there. We just embody, we become a body for a component. So there's me, then there's the air, then there's the mic, the table, the carpet, you people. It's all of us. But we're all part of a single whole. We just don't bother thinking like that, or we don't know to think like that, and therefore we see difference, discrepancy, distance, etc. However, on a higher level, our muzzle, our energy, is able to connect with the muzzle of other things. And so we're drawn to it. And we're drawn to everything. We're like magnets. Everything is drawn. And sometimes we're more drawn to one thing, and sometimes we're more drawn to another. And in that relationship, there is meaning. What our consciousness does is it taps into the subconsciousness, into the superconsciousness, and it goes digging for what is my connection here. Now, the connection may be one of fear. The connection may be one of love. Both are very deep connections. When you're afraid of something, it's there. You're connected, but your connection is one of which you keep away from. When you've got a connection of love, it's one in which you come close to. So we've got different relationships with everything, but it doesn't mean we're going to always engage, but it does mean there's a vibe there. So people are always searching for the meaning for the relationship between us and everything else. And so one of the things that we search for is the meaning as to why things happen to us. Why is something happening to us? Now, I want to talk about this word crisis. I'm not sure if I'm correct in what I'm saying, but it sounds good to me in the moment. If a person is going through crisis, they're not going through, at that particular moment, the cause of the crisis. Now, that may not be true, but I just want to separate the two academically. Let's say you're threatened. You're in a crisis, as in you're in a car crash, chas v'shalom, or someone's ill. At the moment where that hits, we've been designed very, very beautifully to respond. Our brain kicks in. We're not in full control consciously. Our subconscious takes over. We run away. We fight. We seek help. And then once we've responded and it all begins to click, we freeze. We shudder. We get scared. We start going through the emotion. I remember I once hit a guy with my car. I did a U-turn. It was 7 o'clock in the morning, and I was doing a U-turn outside our apartment where we lived, and it was on a hill. So I was doing the U-turn. I couldn't see very far because of the morning glare. It was probably February time, so it was that summer glare, and the sun was coming up in the east. It was 7 o'clock, and I did a U-turn. I didn't see anyone, but I heard it. And it was a guy on a bike, and he went right over the car. And I just pulled the car over. I jumped out. I saw this guy was in a bad way. I didn't have a mobile. I don't think, or maybe I did. I had a mobile. I had my mobile, but I didn't have Hatzola's number, and so I called 000. I ran upstairs to our apartment. I got Hatzola's number. I called my mother-in-law. She's a doctor. I thought, come on, someone protect me here. And I remember I went through it, and as soon as I'd done that, I was like, oh my God, what have I done? What have I done? And I just completely froze. But in the initial moment, I responded. So often that's what happens. We respond. It's what happens after. It's what happens after that can linger for days, months, years. For whatever reason, it lingers. And I'm not talking about the trauma. I'm talking about the ongoing issues. So take, for example, a divorce. Divorces don't just happen. It's not like, we're getting separated and divorce. It goes on and on and on. So there's the initial serving, the initial announcement, I want a divorce from you, or I want to divorce you, or whatever it is. And there's the, okay, fine, or oh my God, whatever that response is. But then it just goes on and on and on. And that's what we're talking about. That's where people start going, why is this happening to me? What is the meaning of this? So I'll give you another example. We got robbed, as you probably know, we got robbed, 2 weeks ago? And they took a whole lot of stuff from our house. Now, we also got robbed 5 years ago, but we also got robbed a week before we got robbed. A whole lot of stuff. If we got the first robbery, the second robbery, it would be nice to have a bit more security in the home. But so we got robbed. But a week before, someone had taken our bikes from the front of the house, and also just after we got robbed, someone decided to help themselves and rummage through the shed in the front of our house. So it was just like multiple things. And of course, what do you say? Why is this happening to us? Well, what's going on here? Like, no one else on the street is getting robbed except us. So you say, your house is the only one that looks like an easy target. No, there must be something more. And we go looking for something more. And so I remember we were sitting there like, why is this happening? What could it be? So we said, maybe our mezuzahs, the scrolls on the door, are not kosher. Maybe there's something wrong with one of them. Because a mezuzah is a mitzvah, which means it brings an energy to the home. If there is a corruption in the mitzvah, you've got a corrupt energy. If you have a corrupt energy, that can manifest in something negative. So we thought, maybe there's something wrong. So we actually got our mezuzahs checked, and guess what? They're all okay. They're all good. We actually wanted one of them to be no good. Because we go, now we know why this is happening. And now, no worries, fix it. The house is good. And we call the scribe, can I pick up the mezuzahs? Yeah, he goes, they're beautiful. Where do you get them from? You got them from me? They're beautiful. In top, even the ones that have been outdoors, excellent condition. I'm like, nothing? Not even like... So then I start looking, is there maybe a doorway in my house that doesn't have a mezuzah? They're all good. And I realized then I've got to stop looking for why this is happening. Because I could drive myself crazy looking for meaning, and I could be falsely mystical in ascribing the reason. I could be falsely mystical in ascribing the reason for why something is going wrong in my life. And this happens often when people go through multiple things and they line them up. And that's where I started tonight. They look for the pattern. This happened, and crazily, this happened a month later, and this happened a month after that. Maybe they're linked, maybe they're not. I say they are linked, just like everything that happens in life is linked, not in isolation to everything else. Why do I say that? Because it's dangerous to start looking for a link. Because it's dangerous to start looking for an inherent meaning when it's not presenting itself in an obvious way. Because if it's presenting in an obvious way, you learn from that. You're like, stop leaving your doors unlocked. There's a pattern here. Every time you go to sleep with all your doors and windows open, you get robbed. So what's the meaning? The meaning is lock your doors. That's the meaning. Don't check your mezuzahs. Don't start giving extra charity. Lock your doors. There's a story with the Baal Shem Tov, one of the greatest mystics of the last 300 years. there was a man who built himself a sukkah. And in the laws of sukkah, there are all sorts of things that if there are holes in the wall, as long as the holes aren't too big, it's as if the wall is solid. If the schach on top, if the branches that you use on top are close enough and there's more shade than there is sun, then it's okay. And if you have a wall here and a wall there, then it's as if you've got all these walls and it's all okay, and it's like you've got a proper sukkah of 4 walls. So this man builds himself a cheap sukkah. He's got a wall here, a wall there, half a hole here, half a hole there, and he goes, aha, my sukkah. He brings in the silver, he brings in the expensive dishes, and then he goes to bed. The next morning comes and his sukkah's empty. He goes to the Baal Shem Tov and he says, what happened? The sukkah didn't protect me. So the Baal Shem Tov said, you know that when you've got 2 and a bit walls, it's like you've got 4 walls. You know that when there's a hole in the wall, it's like it's a solid wall. You know that when there are more branches than less, it's like you've got a proper covering. But the thief didn't know that. So there's no mystical reason here. It's a practical reason. But sometimes we can't see a practical reason. Multiple deaths in family, I can't see a practical reason. So we start searching for the mystical reason or the deeper meaning. And why do I say it's dangerous? Because sometimes, more often than not, you won't find a reason, or even worse, you're going to get a reason that is wrong. The amount of money that people pay to go to soothsayers and psychics and all sorts of street mystics to explain their things, and you end up paying out fortunes of money. Or a person promises you, if you do this, if you buy this kamei, if you buy this charm, if you do that, it'll be better. And you can get blindly ripped off. Blindly ripped off. So that's why I say it's dangerous. Start putting your faith into things that carry no significance. Now, why am I so certain about this? Well, for one reason, it's important to understand that many things that happen in our life and things that happen to us and things that we go through may have nothing to do with anything that has happened in our life. It's not because we've done something. It's not because something has to happen. It may have to do with something that happened 500 years ago in a previous lifetime. It may have everything to do with nothing that has happened, but everything to do with something that will happen. We have no idea. And once we start talking about multiple lives, which is not uncommon, that we carry, why are we here? I can guarantee you now that most of the people in this room are here because stuff has to be carried over from a previous life. There are things that we need to finish achieving. There are tikkunim. There are things that need correcting. There are things that need to be finished. Or there are supports that we need to be to another person. Who knows why we've been reincarnated? But when we're reincarnated on a continuum of things that have been going on from one life to the next. So what, now you're going to start exploring previous lives? It's virtually impossible to access a previous life. I'm not rejecting any of that hypnosis stuff, but I'm rejecting it just for the moment. As in, maybe, maybe not, I don't care. I'm just putting all that on the side because it's not a place that we should go exploring. Don't go exploring in dark, scary houses without a good torch. It's like when you watch the movies. The music's, it's a horror movie, and it's always a white girl. It's always a white girl. And a white girl, she always lives by herself. It's a new home. She's just moved after a bad divorce to where do they always move? Like Connecticut, to a 150-year-old house, which no one has been able to sell for 10 years because it's haunted, but she's moved in. And the music's going, and she's jiggling the keys, and you're like, don't go in, you idiot! Can you not hear the music? No, yeah, she's going in. And she goes in, and she closes the door. What does she never do? Turn on the lights. They always put their keys down and decide, no, I'm going to walk in the dark down the hallway. I'm going to get to the kitchen. And then it's too late. Even if they turn on the light, it's too late because the guy in the mask is standing there. Idiot! A, what are you doing in the house? B, why didn't you turn on the lights? C, what are you buying old haunted houses for in Connecticut? Do you not know? Live in an apartment in New York. Who ever heard of a haunted apartment in New York, in Soho? It's bright, it's light, there's noise, you scream, your neighbors are going to be right there. Hey, you want to live in a forest on a lake by yourself after your murderous ex-husband. Anyway, idiots. They keep the industry alive. But why do I say that? Because we don't dabble in the darker parts, in the parts of the universe which we are not equipped to go searching in. And when it comes to things that are above time and out of the realm of nature, you're messing with you're messing with fire. You're playing with fire because you don't know if it's true. That's number one. So people have spiritual premonitions and all sorts of things. We don't know if it's true. There are people who, let's say someone really can commune with the dead, because principally that can be done. I don't believe the people that do it, but principally it can be done. But who says you're speaking to the person that you think you're talking to? How do you know it's not a muzzle? How do you know it's not a shed? How do you know it's not something negative? You don't. Sounded like him. It sounds like nonsense. Nonsense. Unless someone is extremely qualified in the mystical understandings of the universe outside of nature, we don't go there. So I'm just raising all these things, not because I'm trying to make the class interesting, but because people go there. People go there. And let's say that the people you're going to are not charlatans. You still don't know. So I remember there was a woman. She called me from Sydney. It's like a couple of years ago. She called me from Sydney. She has some pretty weird stuff going on. Now, this woman called me because her cousin said you should call Rabbi Wolf. Why? He might take you seriously. And this guy calls me about his cousin in Sydney. He says, look, she's a tax lawyer. This woman is aggressive as. She is down to earth. She's got degrees coming out of her wazoo, and she's got 2 kids, and she sued Mac and Apple and won on, so like she's not into spirituality, nothing. She's anti-religious. But she's talking about weird mystical stuff. She's seeing things. She's having visitations. No one knows what to do with her. She's gone to a doctor. She knows she's normal. She's not jumping out of her life, but she just knows this is going on. She needs to talk to someone. So I spoke with her. And so basically she was actually in contact with a person, real life person, who was guiding her and feeding whatever was going on. Now, I don't know whether this person was playing with her imagination. I don't know whether this person was genuinely gifted. But I told this woman in Sydney, whatever it is, you should not have anything to do with this woman who is encouraging and speaking to you about the messages you're receiving. Because if it's nonsense, you're being led on by a charlatan. And if it's true, who said she's qualified? And so she said, oh, she is. She's told me which religion she's a part of. I said, okay, I'm going to make this very clear. You're a Jew. You've got a certain soul system. We believe in other soul systems. Please don't merge. Like, it's just a recipe for disaster. Anyway, she stopped, and everything stopped. Hey, one for me. Chalk it up. One success. So it all stopped. And so the reason why I bring this up is because it's a very normal thing. Why is it normal? Because we're looking for the meaning. We look for the meaning. We're looking for the depth. And it's satisfying when you're on the quest. And we feel that perhaps we will find solace and comfort when we start finding answers. Number one, I can tell you it's not necessarily going to be the case. Answers don't bring happiness necessarily. And answers and other things don't necessarily lead to change. Let me give you a few examples of that. When the Jewish people were gathered at Har Sinai, so it says they were gathered at Mount Sinai, and Moses goes up on the mountain, and there's the whole 10 Commandments thing, and then there's the debacle of the golden calf. You're like, what happened there? You were just told one thing, and you're already doubting the whole system. And the reason is because when you go through a miraculous event or something that's incredibly supernatural, doesn't leave an impression, doesn't make you a better person, doesn't make you a more spiritual person. You've just seen something pretty cool, but doesn't necessarily make you something more. There's only one thing that makes us more than what we are. hard work on character refinement. And no miracle is going to do that. A miracle at best is there to give us a kick in the tuchus to start working on ourselves. It's like, oh my God, this incredible thing happened to me. What am I going to do with this new opportunity? You find this with cancer survivors. You find it with people who've gone through terminal illness. You find it with people who have been to the brink of death and back, where they come back and they don't say, oh yeah, that was a very good moment. They talk about that moment as being a defining moment of change. But they never go, and after that, it was all easy. It's always after that, it was hard work, but I had the momentum, I had this reason to want to keep going. It's not like, oh, well, had cancer now, everything's a cinch. It's no, now I've worked on myself and I've gone through this journey and I can actually overcome a lot more than I used to believe. It's hard work, but it's a whole different form of work which comes with a form of pleasure. So what do we see? That it's not about searching for the meaning, but in truth, it is about knowing how to respond. And that's what we're going to talk about over the next couple of weeks. I know the series is longer than that, but that's what we're talking about over the next couple of weeks. Response. So, what I've said so far, in a nutshell, is not to look for the meaning. Now, that's a very heavy thing, but I'm sticking to that. And there's a reason why. It's not my professional, well, what does Menachem say? Menachem says this. This is not Menachem. In order to understand why I'm taking this position, or why I'm presenting this position, I'm not taking it. This is the only position I can find in Chassidus and Kabbalah, is because we have to go back to look at why do we exist as people. So the why we exist is very, very easy and very, very hard. We can run a series on it. I'm not going to tear it apart. But the concept is to create a dira b'tachtonim, to create in this world a spiritual consciousness. So we're here to create a dira b'tachtonim, to create a spiritual awareness. What does that mean? That's fluff. What does it mean to create a spiritual awareness? So everyone's drinking their water. We're going to use this as a good example. I'm going to do it right now. We're going to do a prak. I've never done a prak before in a Kabbalah class, so we're going to, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, so we've got water here. This water comes from the tap. It probably comes from a reservoir, which filled up with rain or was fed by a river system connected to a much larger reservoir. And now it's in my cup. It's not in your cup, it's in my cup. It's not in the building next door, it's in my cup. This water is my water now, and no one else is going to have it. I'm not teasing. I'm building a relationship of that. This water is not here by chance. This water has flowed and come here because there is a reason why I need to interact with it. Just as like the water in front of you is in front of you because you need to interact with it. It is possible that this water has waited, the soul of this water has waited thousands of years in order to arrive at this moment. And so then we look at the water. We go, wow, this water is going to nourish me. And so I'm appreciative. Done. I've appreciated it. Now I'm going to make a bracha. What's a bracha? I'm going to awaken within me the realization that there is a soul in this water. As I physically consume the water, I will become open to receiving the soul that's within the water. There's soul. Remember how I started that everything has a soul in order to exist? So I'm going to now have this soul. This soul will allow me to be exposed to just that little bit more spiritual energy. It will manifest in the form of life. That's why you eat, you drink, you keep taking on life if you do it in the right way. But if I do it with a spiritual intention, I will become changed from the experience. Now, it's a tiny amount of water. It's a tiny moment. I'm just making a bracha and I'm drinking. So I'm not going to be able to just go, oh, wow, wow, I've seen the light. But trust me, if you do this your whole life, where every time you engage with something, you have the intention that is designed for that moment, trust me, you're going to be operating on a completely different plane, become more refined as a person. But also, you bring a consciousness not only to yourself, but also to the water and everything that you've come in contact with. How much more so people. Imagine every time you engaged with someone, you're like, oh my God, this thing's got a soul. I've got a soul. I can connect with this person through love. I'm going to be in their presence. No matter who they are, I'm going to be in their presence, and I'm going to listen to what they have to say, and I'm going to accept it if it's good, and I'm going to reject it if it's bad. I'm going to express no anger towards them. Like, you can go through this. It could also be very daunting and very draining, but it's actually what Kabbalah says is it leads to enlightenment. That's what enlightenment is. Anyway, long talk. All right. So that was a quick class in mindfulness. So we're here to create dibur tachtonim. So we're here to do what I just said. Create a spiritual consciousness in every moment of our life, but not only our life, as well as in the life of other people. Why are we here? What are we learning? We're learning segments of Kabbalah which talk about the states of our consciousness. So we're all going through this dibur tachtonim moment. Now, every moment we can either do that, and that's a very altruistic thing. Like, I'm living in order to create a spiritual consciousness. What's the consciousness? That there's a soul in this, there's a soul in me. All souls belong to one large soul system. The soul is the spiritual energy of the universe. The universe is just a microcosm of something much larger, which is a spiritual field that is connected to the larger spiritual dimensions, which is connected to the infinite. And the infinite is here, and I am the infinite, and the infinite is one. We're all part of the infinite, but what we don't have is the consciousness of the infinite. That is basically saying there's something far greater than me. I belong within a greater context, and therefore I live my life according to that context. That's called Judaism, FYI. There's another way to live your life. Stuff it. I'm thirsty. I'm going to drink that water. That water's going to make me feel good. It's got nothing to do with the water. It's got everything to do with me. All you people, you're here to inflate my ego. So that is what I'm teaching. Make me feel good. Make me feel smart. I eat because I'm hungry. I sleep because I'm tired. I make money because I want to buy more stuff. That is a very self-centered. There is no spirituality, as in there is no awareness or consciousness in why we live. You have a choice to live either way. Not only do you have a choice, we oscillate between both. I'd be shocked if anyone in this room didn't oscillate, where you have a more spiritual day, and then you have a more hedonistic day, a more self-centered day. Then you have another spiritual day. We oscillate in the one meal. You sit down for a Shabbat meal, and you go, oh, Shabbat, I'm going to make kiddush on the wine, I'm going to eat the challah with intention, and then before you know it, you're talking about the cricket, and then you're talking about local politics, and then you're talking about your neighbours, and then you're talking about the people who you call friends, but when they're not around, you can talk about them, and you can laugh about them, and before you know it, you've gone from Shabbos meal to gossip fest. What's that? That's oscillation. We're just moving. And then you go back to benching. Oh, grace after meal. Must give thanks. Must give thanks. Finished our gossip, it's time to give thanks to the infinite one, the creator of the people that I speak about. Thank you. Give thanks for creating a nudnik so I can talk about him. So we oscillate. Why do we oscillate? Because we are a composite of multiple souls, if you will. I said we've got a soul. We actually have different souls within us. And that's what we are. We are a commonwealth of souls. And there are two primary souls, the Nefesh Elokis and the Nefesh Bahamis. We've spoken about this many times. The animal soul, which is the narcissistic or the hedonistic or the self-centered soul, and the Nefesh Elokis, which is the altruistic, other-centered, higher-aware soul. And it is constantly, both of them are constantly striving to take control of our consciousness. And whichever one is in charge of our consciousness will shift the momentum of how we relate and respond to what is going on in our life. So when the Nefesh Bahamis is in control, I look at the food as being a source of joy and pleasure for me. When the Nefesh Elokis is involved, I'm able to look at food as an opportunity to bring consciousness and meaningful consumption into this world in order to bring makriv, to sacrifice, so to speak, to bring an elevation into whatever it is that I, a soul, am able to interact with. And it's constantly jumping from one to the other. And if you're not aware of it, these two keep wrestling, which is why we keep jumping from one type of outlook to the other type of outlook all the time. All the time. When we are going through a crisis, these two are wrestling. Now, the Nefesh Bahamis wants one thing. It wants us to live a life which is self-centered, more than just self-preservation, pleasurable. The Nefesh Elikis wants us to live one thing, an altruistic life, more than altruistic, pleasurable. The difference in the pleasure is that the Nefesh Bahamis finds pleasure when we connect with our inner self. So when you get angry, when you get sad, in a depressed way, not in a clinical depression, in an emotional, self-absorbed moment of just can't do anything because I've just got to focus on me. I'm not talking about someone who has gone through immense pressure and therefore has been broken down to a point where they can't move beyond. That's something completely different. But there's that self-focus. That's Nefesh Bahamis. And there's a joy in being in that. It could be really happy as well. You know, you're in Vegas and it doesn't get better than this. You've got no rules. You can do whatever you want. And you know, if you're a man that's heterosexual, you do what you want. And if whatever it is, it's fantastic. Why? Because I am having fun. That's pleasure. What's the pleasure of the altruistic soul, of the Nefesh Elikis? It's called dveikus. Dveikus is a state of spiritual being in which you are davuk, connected, cleaving to the infinite. When you are davuk to the infinite, you become the infinite. Do you know what pleasure it would be? This isn't even close, but you know the idea when you chap something, when you get something, you've been working really hard on thinking something through or trying to work something out, and then you get it, and you're like, oh, wow, hoy! What's that? That pleasure is because you have now connected with it. And now that you've connected, there's no resistance. Until you got it, there was resistance, there was tension. You weren't davuk. You were relating, but you weren't davuk. When you're davuk, there's no resistance. There's nothing separating. So when the altruistic soul has this moment of where it's connecting consciously to the soul of something else, what's the euphoria there like? Especially when you're connecting to something that's greater than you. It's euphoric. And every moment, each one is searching for a different sort of pleasure. There's the pleasure of having done something good, and then there's the pleasure of doing something good to yourself. Both are pleasurable, but completely different forms of pleasure. Completely different forms of pleasure. Now, each one is going to take control in order to bring you back to your senses. The Nefesh Elikis is like, come back to your senses. Why are you here? You're here with meaning, blah, blah, blah. The Nefesh Bahamis is bring you back to your senses. Why are you here? To have a good time, to look after yourself. Come on, buddy. Enough with this mystical nonsense. When we go through crisis or a challenge, we will always respond with two ways. We always have both these options. One is, get sidetracked. I want to know why this is happening. No one can explain it. Well, I'm going searching for the meaning. What is that doing? It's completely, we think we're on a spiritual quest, but what it's actually doing is it's removing us from being productive, or it's removing us from whatever it is that we should be doing. And we start entering into this world of, why is this happening to me? And I've already said we're not going to get those answers because those answers aren't accessible to us. The other option is that you respond. What am I going to do about it now? What am I doing in this moment as a result of what's happening to me? Now, let me just park that. We're going to continue there in a sec. Let me just go back 2 steps. So the last step was that you're going to look for the meaning. Why is this happening to me? And that removes you. That's the Nefesh Bahamis saying, come on, don't be productive. Stay with the pain, or stay with the you in this moment, and absorb it and stay there. Because as long as you're looking for meaning, you're staying within yourself. Now, I said that what's the purpose of life? To have this spiritual relationship with everything. Let's just go into what Torah and mitzvot are, because I need to bring this up. Torah and mitzvot is the Torah. It's the guide. It's the knowledge. It's the learning. It's the academics. It's the meaning. And mitzvot are the actions. The purpose of mankind is to act. It says dvarim shebelei ve'enam dvarim. Things that are in your head, whatever you're thinking is nothing. Thoughts are nothing. They count for virtually nothing. Intention is good, but only if you do something. If you sit there thinking, oh, I love this person, I love this person, I love this person, but you never actually hug them, of course you've created positive waves. But if you don't actually hug them, that thought, as the Talmud says, is einam dvarim, it counts for nothing. Now, if that person's dead, so you think it. Or if it's a person you hate, so when you think it, you're going through transformational change. It's not nothing. But if you're thinking about your parent who you love so much and you're thinking, I love them, I love them, I love them, but you never actually say, I love you, your thinking is worth nothing. It achieves virtually nothing. So thoughts are only something when they are coupled with an action. Even if the action is an internal action, like character refinement, that's an action. But if it's just a thought, it's nothing. It's nothing. And the whole purpose of living is to do, not to do nothing. Not to think, do. Doing is what it is that our spirituality teaches us. If you see a poor person and you feel compassion, but you had $5 in your pocket and you didn't give it, your compassion's worthless. What does this person need your nourish good feelings for? They need your cash. They're not going to live on macaroons and love alone. This isn't France. It's not like, oh, I love you. No, you need real food. You can't watch TV at night and see African children with flies all over them and bloated bellies and go, oh, it's terrible. What's on the next channel? You've got to do something about it. If you don't do, all that thing counts for nothing. It doesn't count. I'm not going to get myself worked up. So we live in order to do. So now let's come back to you or your friend or someone else who's in the crisis. Crisis is after. Of course, while something is happening, you've got to do whatever it takes to get safe, to get yourself into a balanced position. All that's got to be done. Now that you're there, you've got the ruminating thoughts. You've got the what does this mean? Why is this happening to me? Does God hate me? No one hates you except the person who might be inflicting pain on you. But nothing in the system is punishing you. Oh, that's what I want to say. That's why in my notes I remember it was right at the top. The other thing that people look for is an excuse. So the first thing is people look for is the meaning. The other thing they look for is the excuse. This is happening to me because I did something very bad. And we start looking for the worst thing that we've done. Oh, of course, God's paying me back, or karma. There's no karma in Judaism, so there we go. Took care of that problem. No, not because the principles of karma don't fit into the system of energy that how we understand the world. So that's that. And God doesn't. You think the infinite is going, how am I going to punish this one, huh? So then people say, Menachem, we heard your class. It's all algorithms. It's all built in. You do this, then there's a... It doesn't work like that. As I said, you could be carrying something from a previous lifetime, and it might very well be that it's not even a bad thing. It looks bad, but it's not bad. You say, but Menachem, trust me, this is bad. Okay, I'm not commenting. Wait till we get to the 2 mantras at the end of of today's session. So it's either we look for an excuse or we're looking for the meaning. But what is happening when we're doing in that situation? What are we not doing? We're not acting. So let me give you an example. A series of negative things, break-ins. We have a series of break-ins in our house. So I start looking for the meaning. You ever had that feeling of where you're consumed looking for the meaning of something? So you get onto Google, you get onto Wikipedia, and before you know it's been 5 hours, and you've watched 14 YouTube videos, you've clicked 59 blue links in Wikipedia, you've started typing something to Google, but something more interesting came up, so you clicked on that. And it's all in the name of research of finding the meaning of what's going on. What's going on? What didn't you do in that 5 hours? What didn't you do? You didn't do your job. Let's say it's during work hours, you didn't work. Let's say it's during family life, you didn't connect with family. Let's say it's during your exercise time, you didn't exercise. You've done nothing. No, I was doing important research. I'm looking for the meaning of life. Well, don't go looking on Google or YouTube or Wikipedia. That's not where you're going to find the meaning. What were you doing? You were becoming self-absorbed at a time that it wasn't appropriate. It's never appropriate to become self-absorbed in that way. It is important to do inner reflection and searching, but not in that way. The last Lubavitcher Rebbe wrote a book called Hayom Yom. Hayom Yom are short, interesting sayings that sometimes you'd go, oh, I see the connection why that's now, and others are just like random. But they're all mystical in nature, except the ones which are corrections of texts. It's basically one thought for every day of the year. One idea. And sometimes they're quotes, sometimes they're from his father-in-law. They're just thoughts. He wrote this in the 1940s. And he's got one about the Hasidic Yetzer Hara. So you all know what a Chassid is? Side curls, fur hat. I'm a Chassid, but I don't have side curls and a fur hat. That's not my tradition. But you know the stereotype, the rock throwing, you know, the real one. You know what I'm talking about? So they look very pious because they've got the curls and they've got the big beard and they've got the strimal and they've got the long coat and they look at the ground. Yeah, Satmar is one group, but it could be, there are hundreds of groups. Some have taller, some have shorter, some have wider, some have narrower, but they've got the fur on in the middle of summer. It's beautiful. So that's a Chassidish, from a Chassidic dynasty and belonging to the Chassidic tradition. What's the Yetzer Hara? It's the inclination to do something wrong. So the Rebbe writes that it is possible for a person to have a Chassidish Yetzer Hara. What does that mean? You have the inclination to do something wrong, but it puts on a strimal and it grows side curls and it puts on a black coat and it says, you see, this is a very pious thing. And he gives examples of how this might be. So he says, let's say you're in the middle of prayer and you have this sudden urge. I need to go and do this very important mitzvah. I must connect with someone. He says, trust me, it is a dishonest, negative thing that's going on. Right now, you're in the middle of prayer. Why are you stopping? Finish praying and then do what you need to. Or have you ever had this, where you're finally sitting down? I have this. So let me tell you how easy it is to be a rabbi. You sit down, it's 10 o'clock at night, I'm sitting with my wife, come home from a class or whatever it is, sit down, and she says, Menachem, we need to talk about the credit card bill. And I go, oh my God, I forgot to respond to someone a really important email. Really important. And I'm not making it up, I'm not really on Facebook, and I show her. Someone sent me an email that their mother in France is terminally ill and that they need me to look up the laws about turning off life support. I was like, oh, she could be dead already. I must respond right now. Am I right? 100%. 100%. There's someone terminally ill. I've never met him. They asked me, and I need to answer it. And my wife, well, the credit card will have to wait. The thing is, I haven't spent a minute with my wife that whole day. And there's a hierarchy. Your spouse comes before everyone else in the world. This is a spiritual hierarchy. So the Chassidish Yetzer Hara goes, Menachem, you're a rabbi. The world depends on you. You need to answer this person about life support. It's more, you'll sit with your wife tomorrow. Right now you must go and learn and research and do this. Why am I doing this? Because it's interesting. It's interesting. I'm curious. It's so interesting, but I didn't have a chance to get to it yet today because I was doing more interesting stuff. Now, credit card or this, what am I going to do? Deal with a dying person any day. Well, I need to talk about nourish a credit card stuff. We're not into materialism. We've got to deal with life support questions. So that's the Chassidish Yetzer Hara. It's presenting itself as pious and honest at a time that it's actually not pious to do that. If it was really urgent, I would have dealt with it already. If it's still urgent, I would have come home and I would have said, Rachel, before we sit down and talk about the credit card, which I want to do in 15 minutes, I just need to forward this question to someone who's more qualified than me, or I need to just answer this because I know it, and then we can sit and talk. But when I sit down and I go, how's your day? And she goes, oh, we've got to talk about the credit card. I go, a dying woman in France. Chassidish Yetzer Hara. It's pious, but it's not pious. It's putting on the strimal and going, look how ultra-orthodox this cause is. And you have to be able to see through and say, no, This is not ultra-orthodoxy. This is a distraction from what you're meant to be doing. So we go and we look for the meaning, for why is this happening to me? When really, that's not how we look at life. Life is about doing. Now, what we're going to do next week is look at how do you do when you're in a crisis. I do fine, thank you very much. Now, how do you do? What do you do? Maybe it's time to reflect. How do you know? How does one know? But tonight was just to conclude was to cover the importance of understanding this internal battle to a point of TAVR. TAVR is desire. TAVR is one of the most important words you will find in contemporary Kabbalistic writings. TAVR is inner desire. You know, when you want something, you desire it. It can make you do anything. TAVR makes smart people stupid. TAVR makes people who are so clever do something so stupid and come up with the dumbest excuses instead of just saying, you know what, I had a moment of weakness. I was weak. No, they come up with rationalizations because no one wants to admit they're weak. When you give into your TAVR, who are you weak to? Who are you weak to? You're weak to your own desire. You lost to your own self. There's a interesting chap who I from time to time talk to. I think I've mentioned him before in the class, this particular example, and he was having an issue with an illicit relationship. What bothered him was that he couldn't stop himself. But this is a man who was so disciplined in every other area of his life that it was killing him that he couldn't stop himself. The act didn't bother him. It was the fact that he couldn't stop himself. We are always so embarrassed when we give in to our own self, when we give in to the TAVR. So it's very, very important to identify when is it a TAVR and when is it genuine. When is it the Hasidic Yetzer Hara and when is it genuinely Hasidic? And its context. And the context is that when we're going through crisis, to just go inwards to look for the meaning is not the way to go. It is to respond. Now, the correct response may be to do nothing. The correct response may be to cry. The correct response may be to complain. That's what we're going to talk about next week. But let's just take a moment and reflect on when we're going through something, how much time do we actually spend going through our own head? Going through our own head, looking for something that will suit our narrative, to placate us or comfort us or whatever it is, as opposed to respond to it with an act or a non-action, with a thought, but a correct thought, a focused thought, a prescribed thought. Now, I said that I'd finish with 2 mantras. So we just had Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, we blow the shofar. The shofar is an interesting shape. It's a horn. And what is a horn? It is thin at one end and it is wide at the other end. In order to get to the wide end, you have to start with the thin end. In order for the shofar to work, you need to blow in the thin, constrained, tight end. And what do you blow? Air. You don't push any vibration through yourself. You're just pushing air through. And when you push it through the constrained end, out of the wider end comes an incredible note. What is the shofar? The shofar is showing me that in order to get to that, you have to go through that. You have to go through that. Which means when you're going through that, what is there going to be on the other side? That. It's going to start narrow and it opens up. So there's this beautiful phrase in Hallel, in the book of Tehillim, in the book of Psalms, says, Min ha-meitzar korasika anoni b'merchavka. From the depths I call out to Hashem, but it is from the great expanse to which I get my response. So when we're going through the crisis, when we're going through the challenge, when we're in that, we have to realize this is a constricting moment. This is a tight moment. But if I'm going through a tight moment, there is going to be light. Now, what is the shape of a shofar? A shofar is not straight. A shofar is curled. It's either a long horn or it is a round horn, just a single bend. Whatever it is, the front and the each end is not aligned. When you blow, you're blowing in that direction, but the sound comes out there. the opening is not in the same direction the broad opening is not in the same direction as the narrow opening. There's a bend. And if you thought it was coming in a straight trajectory, you're wrong. You don't see where the bend is in life, but it's there. How are we going to get to the bend? We get to the bend. The bend is always there. The bend is always there. Historically, the bend has always been there. Sometimes it's a long bend, sometimes it's a narrow. I can't predict. No one can predict. But there's always a bend. And there's always a narrow, and there's always an opening. So the first mantra is Min ha-meitzar karasi ka anoni b'merchav yah. Min ha-meitzar karasi yah anoni b'merchav yah. Verse 5 of 118 is Min ha-meitzar karasi yah anoni b'merchav yah. From the depths, or meitzar is the constraints I call out to you. Anoni, answer me, b'merchav yah, with the breadth. Okay, that's number one. But it's not so much about the mantra. It's about the principle. You visualize a shofar. So you're going through something challenging. You visualize the shofar, and you look at the shofar, and you start at the narrow end of the horn, and you see yourself blowing through it. You are the air passing through it, and it's dark, and it's tight, and then it opens up, and that's what we're going through. That's the crisis is that point, but it opens up at the end. That's number one. Number two is that you're not alone. That you're not alone. Often the suffering and the challenges of a crisis is loneliness. It's a result of thinking I'm by myself. And the truth is, if we're going through something, it is because we are able to go through it. Not because we should go through it, but because we are able to go through it. So this, I don't have a Hebrew phrase. This is just a thought process to repeat. If I'm going through it, it is because I'm able to go through it. Because nothing has been designed for me that I am not able to go through. So if you are going through it, it means you are able to. It means that somewhere within you've got this deeper strength. You may not know it at first. You may struggle at first, but it's there. That is one of the fundamental principles that you'll find in Kabbalah, that everyone goes through what they go through. We don't know why, but if you're going through it, you have the strength and no one else does. No one else does. So when you're going through something, you have the strength. That doesn't explain how long it's going to last. It doesn't explain why you're going through it. It's just knowing. Now, what am I saying? What I'm saying is you have to ignore the why am I going through, how long is it going to go for, and just stick with the I can do this. So I don't know if you've ever dehydrated. I remember once dehydrating. I remember multiple times dehydrating, but one time I dehydrated in northern Israel, and I was out hiking with friends. We were up in the Golan, and we'd gone to one of the falls there, maybe Banyas Falls. I don't remember which falls we were at. Beautiful waterfalls. And we hiked all the way down. It was like one of these hot 35, 38 degree days in Israel. And we get down there and I'm completely done. I'm wrecked. And we're down at the bottom of the waterfall, and my head is splitting open. I can't see properly, and I'm dehydrated. And it takes 2 hours to get back to where we need to go. So I remember I was like losing control of my body. It was like really scary. So I said to one of my friends, Issa, just call the park rangers. He goes, this is Israel, they don't have park rangers. I said, just call the army, they'll send a helicopter down, something. I cannot get back. I wasn't even yelling, I was like whispering, like, you got to do this. He's like, it's going to cost your parents a fortune. I was like, no, don't worry, they'll pay for it. They love me. I was 18 at the time, like 19, like I'm not a pisher. Like, they love me, don't worry. He goes, no, we're going to get back. And I'm like, no, I can't. Anyway, so it was with another guy, Connie, and Connie goes, oh, come on, mate. Like, he talks like, come on, mate, get up. We've got to go back to the car. There's aircon. You'll feel good. I'm like, I can't. You've got to call a helicopter. So... And so Issa's like, nah, it's going to cost a fortune. Connie's like, come on, mate, let's get back to the car. So I remember I got up and I walked, and I was only ever walking one step. That's all I was ever doing, just one step, just one more step, just one more step, one more step. Had I thought about the distance, I would have given up. Had I thought about the pain, which I couldn't not think about, but it wasn't where my main attention was, I would have given up. I just want to get one more foot in front. Now, that's not such a romantic story, but I think we've all done that. We've all had those dehydrated stories. Chas v'shalom cancer, not something tragic like that, but we've had moments of where at that moment in our life we thought that was it. That was the pits for me. That was a really bad moment. At that moment, there could be nothing worse. Now I look back, I'm like, nothing worse. I've had a lot worse than that, unfortunately. But that's nothing. But in that moment, it was something. And I did pull through. And how did I pull through? One step at a time. And we all know that feeling of one step at a time. And we all know the one cliche that we hate people saying to us is take it one step at a time. So remove the cliche and literally one step at a time. What does one step at a time mean? It means you don't look at how long it's going to be. You don't focus on the pain. You can't ignore the pain. The pain's there, so be aware of the pain. You know it's a long thing, but keep that in the back of your mind. You just need to get through one step. The Yetzer Hara says, the Nefesh says, no, call the helicopter. Your parents will pay for it. Imagine the glamour. It's going to be so cool. You'll be in the paper. The guy that, it's amazing. No, call the helicopter. And the Nefesh Elokis is saying, no, one step at a time. You don't have to, maybe you'll collapse. Maybe your tucker will collapse. And what would be so bad if you collapsed? What would be so bad if you collapsed? Think about a crisis that you've gone through. What would be so bad if one day you broke down crying? Nothing. There's nothing wrong with collapsing. But right now, if I'm not collapsing, I've got to take a step. What we've got to talk about next week is how that all works, okay? So next week, we continue with something really quite practical, which is how do we respond and what do we respond with? What do we do? So what is this doing? We now know that we've got the internal battle, but what do we do? That's next week. Have a good night.